Rix's Tor's forearm twitched when he thought about that day, the day everything changed. The day his people, the Kailari, learned they had made the biggest mistake in galactic history. He was young then, barely past his second molting, working as a junior analyst in the Talosian Intelligence Division. The massive space station, Ethel Station, orbited the sixth planet of the Viridian system, a gleaming monument to Kailari power that had stood for 300 cycles. From his small office on level 47, Rixus processed reports from across the galaxy, cataloguing threats and opportunities for the Dominion. Most of his work was routine. Skirmishes near the outer rim, trade disputes between minor species, the occasional territorial squabble that required a show of force. Nothing that truly challenged Kalari supremacy. They were the most advanced civilization in known space, masters of particle beam technology and temporal engineering. Their fleets numbered in the thousands. Their territory spanned dozens of star systems, and their military had never known defeat. Then came the report about Earth. Rixus remembered unrolling the data pad that morning, expecting another boring survey of some backwater world. Instead, he found something that made his mandibles click with amusement. A species called humans had just developed faster-than-light communication. Preliminary scans were almost laughable. Earth was a single planet with no colonies, no orbital defenses, and technology that was centuries behind galactic standards. Their fastest ships still used chemical rockets. Their weapons were projectile-based, crude slug throwers and primitive explosives. They hadn't even mastered fusion power beyond basic energy generation. But what caught the attention of Kalari High Command wasn't Earth's primitive technology. It was the planet's resources. Long-range surveys had detected massive deposits of rare minerals, particularly stellarite and quantum crystals that were essential for advanced starship construction. Earth's location was also strategically valuable, sitting at the junction of three major hyperspace routes. Commander Jaxar himself had reviewed the report. Rixus still remembered the meeting where the old warrior had dismissed human capabilities with a wave of his massive claw. Barely evolved primates, he had called them. They play with toys they don't understand. We will offer them the honor of joining the Dominion. If they refuse, we will take what we need. 3 months later, the first human ship arrived at Ethel Station. Rixus was assigned to the diplomatic reception team. He stood in the docking bay with a dozen other officials, watching as the alien vessel slowly maneuvered toward the landing platform. The ship was ugly by Kailari standards, where Kailari vessels were sleek and organic, curved like the shells of their ancestors. The human craft was all angles and harsh lines. It looked more like a flying building than a starship, but despite its crude appearance, the pilot brought it in with smooth, confident movements that spoke of real skill. As the landing clamps engaged, Rixus felt his first hint of unease. The airlock cycled open, and three figures emerged. They were smaller than Kailari, bipedal creatures with soft skin, but they moved with a confidence that seemed out of place. The leader was a male called Captain Rex Dalton. He wore a dark uniform with metal decorations that clinked softly as he walked. His eyes were dark and alert, constantly scanning the docking bay. "Greetings," Captain Dalton said, in surprisingly good galactic standard. "I am Captain Rex Dalton of the Earth Confederation ship Aegis. This is Ambassador Sarah Evans and Commander Mark Allen. We come in peace, seeking friendship and trade." Ambassador Evans stepped forward with a diplomatic smile, speaking in careful, measured tones about cooperation. But it was the third human, Commander Allen, who worried Rixus the most. He said little, watching everything. While the captain and ambassador focused on the Kalari officials, Allen's attention wandered to the docking bay security cameras, the placement of the guards, and the access corridors leading deeper into the station. The formal greetings took place in Conference Room 7, a grand chamber designed to impress. Commander Jaxar presided from the head of a crescent-shaped table. Rixus watched as Ambassador Evans presented gifts from Earth, but Rixus found himself studying Captain Dalton. His eyes never stopped moving, memorizing the room's layout and counting the guards. Commander Allen was even more concerning. He had brought a small device he claimed was a cultural exchange terminal, but Rixus noticed that the device seemed to be doing more listening than sharing. Its sensors were quietly recording everything from room dimensions to the electromagnetic signatures of Kalari equipment. The negotiations continued for 3 days. The humans were polite, patient, and surprisingly well-informed. But there were little things that bothered Rixus. The way Dalton always positioned himself near an exit. how Alan's questions often focused on military topics disguised as innocent curiosity. On the final day, Commander Jaxar made his offer. The Kalari Dominion would welcome Earth as a protectorate world, granting limited self-governance in exchange for mining rights. Ambassador Evans promised a response within 6 months. The humans departed with the same quiet confidence they had shown upon arrival, taking with them detailed records of everything they had seen and heard. 6 months later, Earth's response arrived. It was polite but firm. Humanity declined the Dominion's offer of protection, preferring to remain independent. Commander Jaxar was not pleased. Within a week, the Kailari High Command had voted to claim Earth by force. After all, what could one primitive planet do against the most powerful military in the galaxy? Rixus, now a senior analyst, still felt sick when he remembered the day the war began. The Kailari Dominion declared war on a Tuesday morning. Commander Jaxar made the announcement from the bridge of his flagship, the Triumphant Might. Everyone seemed confident. The betting pools gave the war 3 weeks at most. But the human response changed everything. Every human ship in known space raced back toward their home system, and every colony went silent. 3 weeks after the war declaration, the first scout ships reached the outer edge of the Sol system. The asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter had been turned into a fortress, bristling with weapons platforms and shield generators. The gas giant Jupiter had become a shipyard, launching newly constructed vessels at an impossible rate. Commander Helena Brooks was apparently in charge of the outer system defenses. She broadcasted a simple message to the approaching Kailari scouts: "Turn around and go home. This is your only warning." Jaxar laughed and ordered his advance forces to sweep aside the human defenses. The Battle of Europa changed everything. Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, had been converted into a massive military base. The Kailari attack began with a standard bombardment, but the humans had learned about Kailari tactics from Commander Allen's device. The bombardment struck only empty bunkers and automated decoys. Real defense came from unexpected directions. Human ships emerged from behind asteroids, attacking in small groups, hitting the Kalari formation from multiple angles before disappearing back into cover. Captain Marcus Stone commanded one of the human vessels, a ship called Ares Fury. He used it like a surgeon's blade, striking at weak points in the enemy formation before vanishing. The Kalari fleet found itself fighting an enemy that refused to engage in proper naval combat. Their weapons were weaker than Kalari particle cannons, but they seemed to know exactly where to hit for maximum damage. The most shocking discovery came when Kalari forces captured a damaged human ship. Components in the captured ship showed clear signs of being reverse-engineered from Kalari technology. Somehow the humans had taken sensor readings and equipment samples during their diplomatic visit and used them to upgrade their own systems in just 6 months. Dr. Alex Kim was in charge of human research and development, running massive underground laboratories. They were not just copying Kailari designs. They were finding ways to make them better, cheaper, and easier to produce. The siege of Europa lasted for 6 days. On the seventh day, Captain Stone made his final transmission. Ares Fury had been crippled. Rather than surrender, Stone aimed his dying ship at the Kailari flagship and pushed the engines to overload. "Every inch you take will cost you blood," he said, his voice calm. "Every step toward Earth will be your last." The impact didn't destroy the flagship, but it sent a message that resonated through both fleets. Jaxar ordered a tactical withdrawal. Rixus studied the intelligence reports. The humans had transformed their entire civilization into a war machine in less than 6 months. The most terrifying thing wasn't their technology, it was their attitude. They fought to win completely, no matter what it cost. The war had been going on for 18 months, and what should have been a quick conquest had turned into a nightmare. The humans had developed what their military called asymmetric warfare. General Dana Hayes led the Human Strategic Planning Division, applying lessons from primitive human conflicts to modern space warfare. The first major example came at the Battle of Proxima Station. After the Kalari Third Fleet captured a human outpost, the humans had rigged every critical system with hidden explosives before evacuating, timing the detonation to cause maximum damage when the station was fully operational and crowded with enemy personnel. The Third Fleet lost its command structure and had to withdraw. Colonel Jake Foster commanded the human special operations forces that carried out these deep strike missions. The Kailari had never faced an enemy that operated this way. Lieutenant Commander Steve Johnson pioneered what became known as kinetic bombardment, using simple iron rods accelerated to incredible speeds. The impact energy was equivalent to nuclear weapons, requiring no exotic materials or complex manufacturing. When Kylari ships proved superior in direct combat, humans built faster, more maneuverable vessels that avoided direct combat entirely. When traditional weapons failed to penetrate Kylari armor, humans created entirely new types of ammunition. It was as if the pressure of warfare had accelerated human development beyond all reasonable limits. The breaking point came when Admiral Tom Nelson assumed command of the newly formed human deep strike fleet. Nelson, a former cargo ship captain, used his knowledge of commercial shipping lanes to plan raids that struck at the very heart of Kylari territory. The raid on the Kylos industrial complex, which produced the quantum processors for Kylari ships, was a masterpiece. Nelson's fleet approached through uninhabited systems, emerging too fast for the Guardian fleets to intercept. The operation lasted less than 2 hours. When it was over, the Kylos complex was a burning ruin, its production capacity destroyed for years. Rixus was promoted again, this time to the intelligence staff aboard the flagship. After 2 years of setbacks, Jaxar announced Operation Iron Will, assembling the largest fleet in Kalari history, 3,000 ships, to strike at Centauri Prime, a human colony world with 2 million inhabitants. The plan was to use the threat to civilian lives to force Earth into accepting Kylari terms. The siege began exactly as planned. Jaxar broadcast his ultimatum, demanding immediate surrender. The human response came 12 hours later from Governor Kate Sullivan. "We have received your demands. The people of Centauri Prime vote to remain free. We will not surrender our world to foreign occupation." Jaxar, furious, ordered a systematic blockade. That was when Admiral Kelly Wright arrived with the human relief fleet. Wright's fleet emerged from hyperspace. "Commander Jaxar," she said, her image on the main screen, "I am Admiral Kelly Wright of the Terran Defense Force. You have 48 hours to withdraw your forces from this system. This is your only warning." Jaxar laughed at the pathetic bluff. What happened next became known as Operation Pyrrhic Victory. For 48 hours, the Kalari watched confusedly as human ships, coordinated by logistics expert Commander Peter Williams, moved constantly between the planet's surface and the outer system. The population seemed to be engaged in some kind of organized evacuation. The deadline arrived. Jaxar prepared a limited bombardment, but when his ships moved into formation, they found something that changed everything. Centauri Prime was empty. The entire population had been successfully evacuated right under the noses of the largest fleet in galactic history. Jaxar realized he had been outmaneuvered, but the situation grew worse when his fleet moved to occupy the abandoned orbital facilities. Captain Ryan Ross transmitted the final message from the planet's main orbital facility, the last stand. "Admiral Wright sends her regards," he said calmly. "She wants you to remember that humans always pay their debts." The detonation sequence began. Fusion charges, carefully placed throughout the planet's core, atmosphere processors, and orbital facilities, created a chain reaction. The asteroid belt had been rigged with hidden charges. The gas giant's orbital platforms were rigged with quantum destabilizers. The humans had turned an entire world and its system into a weapon. The explosion was visible from neighboring star systems. When the radiation cleared, the Centauri system had become a stellar graveyard, filled with the wreckage of over 1,500 Kylari ships. Jaxar's flagship survived, but the electromagnetic pulse had crippled most of his fleet. Rixus found himself in an escape pod, watching as the human fleet emerged from the outer system. Admiral Wright's ships, safely positioned beyond the blast zone, moved through the wreckage like predators. Rixus spent 3 months as a prisoner aboard the human ship Mercy's Light. The human crew treated their prisoners with professional courtesy and genuine care. There was no hatred in their voices, no desire for revenge. They treated the war like a job that needed to be finished. Admiral Susan Blake commanded what the humans called the Long Hunt, a systematic campaign to eliminate every Kylari military presence. Her ships were faster and equipped with technologies that had advanced by decades in just a few months. Captain Aaron Turner led the assault force that penetrated and destroyed the Kylos shipyards, a 3-century-old facility deep in Kylari territory. But the most terrifying factor was the Human Intelligence Analysis Division, led by Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a former behavioral psychologist who created psychological profiles of enemy commanders to predict their every move. The turning point came when Admiral Clara Johnson, commanding the human flagship Invincible, broadcast a message on all frequencies throughout Kailari space. The transmission contained detailed, accurate information about every military installation, government facility, and strategic resource in the entire Dominion. "We know where you are," Admiral Johnson said, her voice calm and professional. "We know what you have, who commands it, and how you plan to use it. You have no secrets from us anymore." The psychological impact was devastating. Admiral Johnson's message included terms for ending the war, a formal ceasefire, recognition of human sovereignty, and a commitment that Kailari forces would never again threaten them. No demands for tribute or concessions. They simply wanted to be left alone. Ambassador Sarah Evans, accompanied by Captain Turner, personally delivered the peace proposal to the Kailari High Command. The negotiations lasted 6 days. Jaxar, the architect of the invasion, spoke for many. "How did we lose to creatures we dismissed as barely civilized?" Captain Turner provided an answer that will be quoted in military academies for generations to come. "You assume that technology determines victory," he said. "But wars are won by adaptation, determination, and the willingness to pay whatever price victory requires. We learned your technology, improved upon it, and used it better than you did. We studied your tactics, found their weaknesses, and developed counters for every strategy you employed. Most importantly, we fought for our survival while you fought for your convenience." The peace treaty was signed on a Tuesday morning, exactly 3 years after the war had begun. Rixus, the analyst who had seen it all from the first flick of his twitching forelimb, finally understood. Humanity had proven that some prices were too high to pay for conquest. A civilization that fights for its existence will always defeat an empire that fights for convenience.